So, today we're going to dive into the story of a company that, for more than 100 years, has been in this constant state of reinvention. From punch cards all the way to quantum computers, this is the story of how IBM pretty much silently built the foundations of our modern world. I mean, think about it for a second. Every time you use a credit card, or book a flight, or even just do a quick Google search, you're tapping into this vast, complex digital foundation that you never, ever see. It's kind of like the circulatory system of our whole modern civilization. And here's the wild part. So much of that foundational layer, all that invisible plumbing, can be traced back to the work of just a single company. This is the story of their quiet, methodical revolution. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. And believe me, this company was anything but a tech titan back then. This is the origin story of a century-long campaign to completely change how we handle information. So back in 1911, the company that would one day be IBM was called the Computing Tabulating Recording Company. Yeah, CTR. And let me tell you, it was a total mess. A jumble of unprofitable businesses just bleeding money. Frankly, it was on the verge of complete collapse. Now, the guy they brought in to rescue this sinking ship was Thomas Watson Sr. And what's so important to get here is that Watson, well, he wasn't some tech visionary or an engineer. Nope. He was a salesman. His real genius was seeing this universal problem that basically everyone was ignoring. The modern world was just creating way more information than anyone knew how to handle. And that insight, it led to the company's first huge pivot. They went from selling, random gadgets to solving that massive data problem. And that single shift, it laid the groundwork for absolutely everything that came next. I mean, just think about how big this problem was. The 1880 U.S. Census took 7 years to count by hand. 7! But then, just a decade later, this guy Herman Hollerith invents a punch card machine that slashes that time down to just 18 months. Watson saw this, seized on the tech, and renames the company to something way more ambitious: International Business Machines. And it worked. By 1935, his machines were the absolute backbone for huge government projects, like the brand new Social Security Administration. So this is the really crucial part to understand. You had two halves of this genius idea, right? Hollerith, he came up with the technical fix, the machine itself. But Watson provided the business vision. He wasn't just selling a box with gears. He was selling a complete solution to a universal problem. He was selling a way to make his technology the essential, can't-live-without-it infrastructure for any modern business or government. And the way he did it was just revolutionary. Instead of selling the machines, IBM leased them. Now, this was brilliant for a few reasons. First, it made it way easier for customers to get on board. But more importantly, it created this steady, predictable stream of money for IBM. We're talking decades before anyone even whispered SaaS or subscription model. Watson had already nailed it. He was locking customers into an ongoing relationship. You weren't just buying a product, you were buying into the entire IBM ecosystem. Okay, so fast forward a bit. Technology's starting to shift, right? We're moving from clunky mechanical counters to sleek electronic computers. And this forces IBM to face a choice that would pretty much define its future and lead to the single biggest gamble in corporate history. At first, Watson Sr. was actually pretty skeptical about electronic computers. He just didn't see a real business market for them. But then a massive contract with the U.S. Air Force for their SAGE air defense network basically forced the company to get really, really good at electronics, software, and real-time computing. It ended up being this accidental bridge to the future they didn't even know they needed to build. And all that new expertise led to this incredibly audacious idea. What if they created one single compatible family of computers? The problem? The price tag was just astronomical. We're talking $5 billion in the 1960s. To put that in perspective, that is more money than the U.S. spent on the entire Manhattan Project to build the atomic bomb. Just wow. Thomas Watson Jr., who'd taken over from his dad by this point, he knew exactly how high the stakes were. He literally called the decision to launch the System/360 a bet the company move. No exaggeration. If this thing failed, IBM was done. Finished. So, what was so revolutionary about this thing? Well, before the System/360, every single computer was its own little island. They were all incompatible. So if you upgraded your machine, you had to throw out all your software and rewrite it from scratch. It was a nightmare. System/360 promised something totally different. A whole family of computers, from small to huge, where your software could run on any model. It protected your massive investment in code. And the payoff from that huge bet, it literally changed the world. By creating a stable, predictable platform, IBM basically gave birth to the entire modern software industry. All of a sudden, you could write a program one time and sell it to thousands of different customers. See, this wasn't just about selling more computers. It was about creating a whole new economic ecosystem that ran on top of IBM's hardware. But as we all know, dominance never lasts forever. The PC revolution, the very one that IBM helped kickstart, well, it almost ended up destroying the company. And that forced them into yet another radical reinvention. So here's the great irony, the big paradox. IBM's brand is what made the personal computer a serious tool for business. But they made a fatal mistake. They outsourced the two most important parts, the brain, the processor, to Intel, and the soul, the operating system, to a little company called Microsoft. In doing that, they gave up platform control. It's like building this amazing movie theater, but then letting somebody else sell all the tickets and all the popcorn. Intel and Microsoft ended up owning the most valuable parts of the ecosystem, and they captured almost all the profit, leaving IBM to fight it out in the low-margin business of just building the metal box. And the result was just catastrophic. By 1993, their old mainframe business was collapsing, their PC business wasn't making real money, and IBM posted a loss of $8 billion. At the time, that was the biggest corporate loss in American history. The giant was on its knees, and it really looked like it was over. So, in a moment of sheer desperation, the board made this absolutely shocking choice. They hired a total outsider, Lou Gerstner. This guy was an executive from a food and tobacco company. He had zero, and I mean zero, experience in tech. The entire industry thought they were crazy. But Gerstner, he brought the one thing IBM desperately needed, an outsider's perspective. He looked at it and realized, you know what? Customers aren't buying boxes. They're trying to buy solutions to really complex problems. So he completely transformed IBM's focus. The company's whole identity shifted from being a hardware maker to a provider of integrated solutions, consulting, and software. He didn't just save the company, he gave it a totally new reason to even exist. All right, so as we start to wrap up this incredible story, what are the big lessons here? What can we take away from this century of constant and, let's be honest, often painful adaptation? I mean, the IBM playbook is really a masterclass in how to survive. Think about it. From System/360 basically eating their own older products to Gerstner selling off the PC business that they themselves created. The lesson is crystal clear. Survival means you have to be willing to disrupt yourself. You have to be willing to abandon your past to own your future. It's all about focusing on what your customers actually need, not just on the stuff you happen to make. And, that brings us right up to today. IBM managed to survive the jump from tabulators to mainframes, and then from hardware to services. But now it's facing a whole new era, the age of AI and cloud computing, and this time it's dominated by a totally new set of giants. So the big question is, after a whole century of navigating disruption, does this old master of adaptation have one more reinvention left in it?